You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
The testimonials appearing in this podcast reflect individual experiences and individual results may vary. Cardinal Health does not claim, nor should the listener assume, that any individual experience recounted in this podcast is representative of what another consumer may experience.
The Cardinal Health Counter Talk podcast, in collaboration with Pharmacy Podcast Network, is for independent pharmacists to learn about the state of the industry, innovative services and solutions, and the future of pharmacy. Join me, your host, Jason Calori, for conversations with pharmacists, Cardinal Health leaders, and industry experts, sharing best practices, discussing industry trends, and showcasing Cardinal Health products and services. You can subscribe to the Cardinal Health Counter Talk podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cardinal Health Counter Talk podcast. I'm your host, Jason Calori, and today we have a really interesting show getting into biosimilars and the year 2025 marking 10 years since biosimilars first came into the market. Now, in this episode, we will be talking to Tracy Poor, Director of Biosimilars here at Cardinal Health, to give us a bit of a reintroduction to biosimilars, learn about their genesis, their evolution, and how they're being utilized today within the healthcare landscape. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you as well. It's been quite a while since we did an episode on biosimilars, so I'm really interested to know how biosimilars has evolved over the last several years and since its inception back in 2015. But before we get into that, Tracy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So like you said, I'm the Director of Biosimilars. I actually have been in the biosimilar industry since 2015, since our inception of commercialization here in the United States. So not only is the biosimilar industry 10 years old, I'm celebrating 10 years of being in the same industry myself. So it's been quite a milestone. I love to see the evolution and the progress that we've made in this market, how much we've done for the healthcare ecosystem, for patients. It's an exciting time.
All right, so we're celebrating two things today then, right? Is that what we're telling me?
Yeah. Two big milestones.
All right, well, let's get into it. So we just talked about that 2025 marks 10 years since the biosimilar has come to market. But first, why don't we do a quick explanation of what a biosimilar is for anyone that's unaware of what it is, just to kind of give a little bit of a reintroduction. That'd be great.
Well, I think I'm going to start with the FDA definition, right? I think that's a good starting point to understand biosimilarity. The FDA defines a biosimilar as a biological product that's highly similar to a reference product, notwithstanding minor differences in terms of like safety, purity, and potency. But the way this even occurs is a biologic, and I will explain what a biologic is as well in a minute. But when a biologic loses patent protection, other pharmaceutical manufacturers can use the 351(k) pathway to produce a product that is highly similar. Once that product is approved, it is a biosimilar. Now, biologics are different than when you think of a pill type of medication. Biologics are usually injected or infused, and non-biologics are typically oral. Biologics are complex, large molecules. They're produced from living organisms. Whereas if you think of a pill medication, which is where generics originate, they're smaller, they're simple molecules, they're just chemically synthesized in a lab. They're not as complex to create, which is why biologics have a biosimilar regulatory pathway for approval and why they're different from other products on the market.
Okay, so get into the pathway you're talking about. How does that work?
So the 351(k) pathway is a pathway specific for biosimilars, and it is different. It minimizes the investment because the required clinical trials look different than the originator biologic. It also reduces the time it takes. Biosimilar can come to market for between 100 and 300 million, which is substantially less than the originator biologic. and 6 to 10 years, which is also substantially less than the originator biologic. So it's an abbreviated pathway. It's a shortened and condensed version because this product is showing it's highly similar to the originator. It's not showing and proving clinical efficacy as rigorously as the originator product had to. So they have a different pathway to approval. And it's been interesting because they still do a lot of phase 3 trials, they still do a lot of clinical work, but they're really just trying to show that they're highly similar and they don't have any immunogenicities in the body. And that has saved manufacturers time and money, bringing these additional cost-effective treatment options to the market.
Interesting. So let's get into a little bit about why biosimilars are important to healthcare. Because in a state of mind where people will just maybe revert back to, well, I'm just going to wait for the generic. Why are biosimilars so important to healthcare these days compared to where they were?
Sure. So biologics will never have generics.
Mm-hmm.
So this is their chance. so biosimilars are super important to healthcare because we're increasing access to effective treatments. This is your opportunity to have other treatment options in the space of biologics. They reduce costs, they promote competition in the market. Biosimilars increase the range of available therapies, which gives our providers and patients more choices with high standards of care. Because these products won't ever have generics, this really is the opportunity to have other options that could possibly be more cost effective. Biosimilars, that lower price tag that they have in the last decade, which is one of our celebratory moments, they've saved $36 billion in one decade.
Wow.
So those are significant savings. And the exciting thing about those savings is they can be reinvested into the market to fund future innovation.
Well, that's pretty incredible to hear, especially that cost savings. That's not a small number, and I feel like it. I think to your point, the opportunity is just there for the taking. So that's pretty exciting. As we spoke about earlier when we did the introduction, 2025 is 10 years since the first biosimilar came to market. What does this mean to you personally, for the market overall? And I also want to get a little bit of your Cardinal Health perspective. What has this really done for Cardinal Health, where something maybe had started out as an idea, something do we want to get into, and now 10 years later, what the perspective is now?
Sure. So this 10-year mark truly is a celebration. It is a significant milestone for the healthcare ecosystem, reflecting progress, meaning those savings that have been actualized, and some ongoing challenges to adoption. So it's both sides, right? It's progress and the acceptance and realization of challenges and deciding how to move forward and what we need to do. The last 10 years have built a really strong foundation for the biosimilar industry. We haven't unleashed the full impact of biosimilars in the market, but we've built a strong foundation. And the next 10 years are exciting. We'll see what we can do. Like, we can unleash this impact. We can create more savings, bring more competition and treatment choices to the market. But the market has learned a lot over the last decade. Biologics account for only 2% of prescriptions. So you might think, wow, that's not that much. Why are we focused here? Well, that 2% of prescriptions is actually almost 40% of medication spend. It's just over 37%. So while it's 2% of prescriptions, it's 37% of spend. In 2023, the US spent $260 billion on biologic medication. So this is an extremely significant area of spend that we have to find a way to draw savings. And biosimilars are one of the only options. That's why there's so much focus and importance on this market. Another thing that's super important about biosimilars is that they've enabled nearly 344 incremental days of therapy that would not have occurred without lower costs driven by these products.
Wow.
So it's extremely significant and important for patients, for the system, from a savings perspective. And you know, that is why this market is important to Cardinal Health and why Cardinal Health is working to educate about these cost-effective treatment options and provide support to customers. We have our website that is available to the public, and that has an enormous amount of resources. We've collected FDA resources and other Cardinal Health resources on that website to help drive that awareness and drive that education, because we see that need to bring the savings to the system to fund the future.
When you talk about cost savings, because these are big numbers, can you give us a little bit of an overview? Who exactly overall is getting these cost savings? Is it manufacturers? Is it the doctors? Is it the patients? Just give us a little bit of an overview of where all this savings is hitting.
Yeah, I would say the savings is hitting the system, right? Because prices are coming down, both innovator prices and biosimilar prices. So it's just less spend in the biologic medication basket.
Mm-hmm.
But there are benefits that trickle down to patient level. For example, Medicare beneficiaries, they're estimated to save $2,000 each in potential out-of-pocket costs due to biosimilar competition, because biosimilars have the ability to reduce costs and curb price escalation. So maybe the biosimilar isn't the only product that's had a price decrease. Maybe the originator has had a price decrease, or maybe just it's curbed price escalation. So because of that, it is drawing in savings. And CMS has been able to state that there is potential savings for out-of-pocket costs due to this competition in the marketplace. So we do know that there are many different stakeholders that are receiving benefits from the biosimilar business.
You mentioned a little bit ago about the U.S. government playing a role in the availability of biosimilars. Can you get a little bit into that and maybe elaborate more on how this and the role of the U.S. government has affected Cardinal Health and our role in bringing biosimilars to the market as well?
Sure. There have been many, or I should say several, key regulatory shifts in the last decade that have impacted biosimilars and Cardinal Health's ability to bring those biosimilars into the hands of our customers and essentially into the hands of our patients. So in 2010, the Affordable Care Act created that abbreviated approval pathway for biosimilars that you and I discussed at the very beginning of our conversation. And then the BPCIA, which is the Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act, also in 2010, created a regulatory approval process for biosimilars. So we got an abbreviated approval pathway, a regulatory approval process. And then in 2015, we had our first biosimilar commercialized in the United States, Zarxio launched. So those regulatory frameworks enabled that first drug to hit the market. In 2022, we saw the Inflation Reduction Act, which aims to decrease drug costs, which aligns with biosimilars. Congress does continue to try and move the needle with the Red Tape Elimination Act, which is an act that would deem all products interchangeable. And if you're looking at what impact regulation has had, well, with that first launch in 2015, if you look to today, 2025, there are over 72 approved biosimilars. So that indicates the success of this regulatory process. We've been able to bring over 70 products to an approved state within the U.S. market. So
wow.
that is how the regulation has enabled Cardinal Health to get products into the hands of the customers.
Wow, that's a lot of information there. I mean, it's astounding how I'm trying to remember when I first had that chat way back when, how many were approved. And now you're saying today we're over, what do you say, 22? 72 different biosimilars. That's incredible. I want to get into now, as we've talked about the beginning of biosimilars, the pathway, everything that's kind of led up to now, the government being involved, and how we're seeing this evolution. What about the future of biosimilars? You talked about retinas and those biosimilars being introduced in 2021. With this landscape evolving, what do you think healthcare decision makers should be anticipating in the future when it comes to biosimilars?
Yeah, so let's talk about retina just a little bit, and as we lead into that, because we did focus a lot on retina in our biosimilars report that we're celebrating, our decade piece.
Yep.
Because the retina market is a huge piece of the future, and it's fairly new. If we look at this timeline of the retina market, it's significant for biosimilars because this is one of the first times biosimilars have become mainstream as we're evolving into retina, and now this summer we'll be evolving into bone health. The retina market is interesting because it has shown it isn't a fast uptake market, which is similar to oncology. And maybe that wasn't really anticipated. It's exciting, and it means that there's opportunity for other therapeutic areas to see quick uptake in the market. So for retina, the first FDA approvals were in 2021. We had launches in 2022, more approvals in 24. Also in 24, what we saw was the ranibizumab biosimilars reaching a 55% share 3 years post-launch. That's exciting. That's really more common in oncology, where we see a lot of acceptance. So I think that the takeaway here is there's real opportunity with retina. It's exciting. When you ask, what do I think everyone should expect with the future? Well, in retina, I think all stakeholders should expect increased treatment options and decreasing costs because of all of these products that have been approved and are starting to launch into the market. I also think they should expect to focus on education. And the reason I say that is because in a survey that we did and some interviews that we performed with retina specialists for our biosimilars report here at Cardinal Health, we identified a gap. An interview that we did with a retina specialist uncovered that 1 in every 100 patients in his retina practice knows what a biosimilar is. So I think that's a huge takeaway for the next decade is we need to continue to focus on education. And as biosimilars launch into new therapeutic areas like retina, like bone health, that means new patients. It could mean new providers. So that mission of education, it never ends. It's a whole new subset of people that we need to teach and provide awareness to.
So retinopathy, which is kind of the treatment of, for the retina, is usually, from what I've read, it's therapeutic. It usually stems from diabetes and diabetic health issues. Is that accurate?
Some do, yeah. I mean, it's macular degeneration, could also be, age related. But yes, there are a few illnesses that could lead to this type of necessity for medication and from an indication perspective. It's also a sensitive area. It's the eye. It's an injection in the eye. There's a lot of education needed when you reach a new market like that. And, it's a scary space. It's your eye. It's the vision. It's, I think that we learned a lot from the survey and from the interviews we've done in the retina space. And we are working really hard to continue to provide education and awareness in the retina market because of the results of what we have put together through our reports.
So as far as the challenges that we're seeing with biosimilars, I remember, back when talking about it, it was there's a high cost of development, but you're also saying that there is a significant savings that comes along with that, once it hits the market. So what challenges did biosimilars have at the start and the introduction 10 years ago to what we're seeing today?
So that's a really good point. And that was the same question that I had. And so we did create some research in the decade piece around barriers. When we set out to create content for this decade piece, I said, I want to know from our customers if the barriers are better than they were when this market started 10 years ago. Are they worse? Are they the same? I'd like to see how the practices have evolved with the biosimilar market, just not how I see the evolution. Oh, we have 72 products. What is it like for our our practices, our providers, our health
Mm-hmm.
business partners. So we had some amazing interviews, and we learned quite a bit from the oncology side of the business. And what we learned is that they've identified two types of barriers, and I'll share that with you because I think it's impactful to hear. They are economic and non-economic barriers. The
Okay.
economic barriers included reimbursement policies and pricing dynamics. The non-economic barriers were provider and patient awareness, which we at Cardinal Health have made a strategic priority, inventory management, and benefit investigation processes. And I think these barriers all still exist today in some way, shape, or form. I think it just depends on the stakeholder. For example, some offices have really tight revenue cycle management, which you would find in our article with Marlo Blazin. And they've mastered on-time ordering, which has alleviated a lot of these barriers. But while other stakeholders, they may still struggle with these barriers. And I think there's value in sharing that article because maybe some practices can learn from this practice that has found a way to make biosimilar adoption effective for them. So I think there's value in sharing best practices, good stories, what works. That's what we've tried to do the last couple of years with our biosimilars report, is share learnings that could maybe help other practices find ways to benefit from this opportunity.
Yeah, real-time stories and people that are actually doing it out in the market and telling those stories, it seems to be the best way to communicate those types of situations. So it'll be a great resource. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. But with the challenges that we're talking about here, the near future and the long-term future, any of those challenges still exist today that you saw in the beginning that we're seeing now?
There are some challenges that are the same. In some markets, we're not seeing that fast uptake, like what I mentioned, we're seeing with retina or we're seeing with oncology. Some of the uptakes and maybe rheumatology, that market adoption has taken a little longer to get a good share of the patients. And there's been a lot of learnings there. There are still some barriers with benefits investigations or the operational piece for practices. Switching from one product to another requires a new prior auth, maybe running a benefit investigation, checking into the patient's payer requirements, and it's just administrative burden. Some of those barriers have not gone away, and maybe they won't. Maybe what we do is just continue to support those customers through those administrative barriers because it's how the system works and they're not all able to be completely alleviated.
Got it. So with biosimilars growing so fast, at least right now, what do you think the future for biosimilars is? Even if we talk short term, maybe the next 5-10 years, or long term down the line, where do you see it going?
I think the future for biosimilars is bright, whether you're looking at short term or long term. So for short term, we're seeing increased treatment options. We're seeing significant savings. Like I said, we're already at $36 billion. We are seeing improved payer acceptance. Payers are adding biosimilars to formulary much faster after launch than they did 10 years ago. We're seeing many more biosimilars winning coverage. And that is showing that short term is a bright future for us because we've already seen so much growth and progression. From a long-term perspective, now I want to say it's a huge opportunity, right? It's even brighter. There's 118 biologics in the next decade that are losing that patent protection. And remember, I said in the beginning, that's how you can bring a biosimilar to market. So we have 118 opportunities that equate to a $234 billion opportunity spreading across 13 broad therapeutic areas. This is pivotal to me. This 13 therapeutic areas is where it's really exciting because biosimilars predominantly have been concentrated in immunology and oncology, and the ability to reach other subsets of patients and provide more treatment options, provide cost savings. That's super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, $234 billion opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. I'm just like trying to wrap my head around that. 118 different biologics that could be available. So as you go further here, now that, advancing, not only talking about it with folks and trying to help navigate different, whether it be independent pharmacists or other people within healthcare trying to navigate the landscape of biosimilars, what role is Cardinal Health playing in advancing biosimilars and maybe getting that word out into the market and talking about how this could be a $234 billion opportunity for folks?
Yeah, Cardinal's role here is increasing awareness of these cost-effective alternatives and educating stakeholders. We do see the value of this market and its importance in funding future innovation as we look at markets like cell and gene, where therapies could be $4 million for one dose or more. We know we have to find ways to bring savings back into the system, and biosimilars are one of those opportunities. So it's a beautiful link between cost savings and innovation. And we aim to partner and collaborate with all the stakeholders within this healthcare industry to help drive this. The next few years are exciting. This year alone is exciting. There's many new molecules coming to market. For example, denosumab is a molecule that is expected to launch this summer. And a lot of customers are asking questions about these products. And at Cardinal, we're supporting our customers. We're helping them find the answers in every way that we can. We also have our website that has tons of resources. So I'm traveling around the country as well as Fran Gregory, speaking on biosimilars, spreading the message. So we're working hard to keep that avenue of information flowing throughout the entire industry.
So with this being the Counter Talk podcast, and obviously most of our audience are probably most likely independent pharmacists, how can pharmacists add value to the future of biosimilars? I think it's an important question. Maybe pharmacists hear that number, $234, billion opportunity. Like, all right, how do I get involved in this? What does it look like for the future of the independent pharmacist?
Yeah, what we have learned in the last decade is the value of the pharmacist in the biosimilar industry. They are one of the most important stakeholders for biosimilars. Pharmacists play a critical role because they're in this interesting space where they have the trust of a patient and a trust of a provider because of their expertise and just their role in general. They have this really great relationship with patients and providers. So they're pivotal in the biosimilar conversation. The pharmacists are educating the patients and the providers about biosimilars. They're helping to build that trust and confidence in these products. That acceptance of these products is what improves the market, the sustainability, and the adoption. So a pharmacist is key and critical for this adoption in biosimilars to grow. And we know that. So we've really started to focus more on the role of the pharmacist. How can we partner with our pharmacists? What resources do they need to help drive biosimilar utilization? Another interesting role that a pharmacist can take is around interchangeability. Some biosimilars come to market with an interchangeability designation and some don't. And that does produce some confusion in the market. There have been some misconceptions if the interchangeable products are better than the ones that are not interchangeable, which is not true. The products are all, according to the FDA, highly similar and of the same caliber. And I find that pharmacists tend to be the primary stakeholder addressing those misconceptions and educating on interchangeability. The other piece of a pharmacist is they can actually target that education to the specific person they're talking with. So like on our website, we have vast amounts of education, but it maybe isn't targeted. Like, you're a provider, I'm going to tell you this. You're a patient, I'm going to tell you this. When a pharmacist is having a conversation, they're targeting that education, making it relevant to the person they're talking to. And we know that when information is relevant and targeted, it's more effective. So the pharmacist I cannot tell you the emphasis we place on that stakeholder. And then the very last thing is that they can highlight the cost savings where it's appropriate. So it's really multifactorial what they can do for the biosimilar industry.
No, yeah, I appreciate that insight. I'm sure the listeners do too. I think that's amazing. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, Tracy. I'm going to give you your elevator pitch, if you will. So if I'm someone, or there's a stakeholder, or if there's a pharmacist or a doctor, or whoever it may be, if they're interested in buying or purchasing biosimilars, why should they? And why should they be jumping on board, today? So I'll give me your elevator pitch on why I should be buying biosimilars.
Okay. You should be buying biosimilars because it's increased treatment options. When a patient is diagnosed with a disease, they don't want one option. They want multiple treatment options. This is that opportunity. They also could be cheaper. This could reduce the costs. And that is an amazing opportunity as well. And then lastly, this creates a strengthened supply chain. We have more drugs in the channel. If there's a stock out on one product, we have a highly similar product. So we're strengthening the abundance of the supply and inventory in the country. That is why you should buy a biosimilar.
All right, I'm buying. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, so today, Tracy, thank you so much. We talked about a lot. We talked about the genesis of biosimilars, the pathways that are available now, the regulatory frameworks, the savings within the healthcare system, 118 biosimilars coming to fruition here pretty soon, and with a $234 billion opportunity, the pharmacist impact here, and biosimilars being just another great option for treatment and possibly being cheaper. So we covered a lot, but I do want to give an opportunity for all the listeners here to, you kept referencing the 10-year biosimilar report. So anybody that's listening, if they're interested in reading the report and really taking a deep dive, where can they find it?
Listeners can head to our website at cardinalhealth.com/biosimilars. And they can download the report and learn more. And they can always email myself and my team with any questions that they may have. We would love to connect and help out.
So cardinalhealth.com/biosimilars, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be pretty easy to remember. And also the biosimilars team, you guys are going to be at RBC to talk to potential customers. Is that correct?
Yes, I will be running the booth. Stop by and see me.
I think I'm going to stop by the booth and see if you could sell me again on biosimilars. I appreciate it.
Sounds great.
All right. So with all that said, I want to say thanks to Tracy for providing her valuable time and taking us all to school on all things biosimilars. I hope all of you learned as much as I did today. Remember, visit cardinalhealth.com/biosimilars to read that report and get all the information you need. And to all of you, thanks for listening to today's episode of the Cardinal Health Counter Talk podcast. As a reminder, if this is